Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Nathan. Can I just check that people can hear me? Can someone tap? You should have a chat function there that you can type in. Anyone who's watching? Yes, amazing. Okay. There's always that worry that there's going to be technical difficulties. Thanks for responding, Jan. So those of you who are here, I've got a few people. We'll wait another couple of minutes to get more people live. Where are people joining us from? Where are people based? Okie doke, Queensland. Don't think I've ever been up to Ipswich. What about you, Jan? Where are you from? Hello, Miriam in Melbourne. Gippsland, amazing. I'm trying to go to Gippsland with my wife soon for a little trip now that we're allowed to get out of Metro Melbourne. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad the chat function is working. You should also be able to type in some questions. So when we have the Q&A section later, you should have the option to do that. Yes. Yeah, I've already looked at Gippsland. It looks amazing. I think there's just so many different places to go. So, so much of regional Victoria explored. Oh, right, well, I think I'm going to get going. If you have any questions during as well, type them in the chat box, and I'll see if I can answer some things as we're going as well. But then obviously there'll be the section at the end for you guys. So welcome to this webinar. This is my first time using this webinar platform, so I'm sort of trying to navigate things, but we should be okay. This webinar is called 5 Steps to Reduce Frustration and Reconnect with Your Purpose in Nursing. So let's just move the slides. Okie doke. So just as a bit of an outline, so this is kind of the intended learning outcomes of this webinar this evening. So I'm hoping you'll get a clear understanding of your frustration, maybe some of the other emotions that you're feeling right now with respect to your work, what your options are, and learn some skills that will help change your situation to feel more motivated, more focused on what's important to you in your work and career. So I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction to begin with about myself. So I don't know, some of you might have seen my stuff before. You might have seen me on Facebook. You might have checked out my page. You might have seen my website. But I guess some of you might not have come across me at all, really, other than the kind of advert for the webinar. Thanks for being here. Really sort of appreciative of you joining me. So after my intro, I'm just going to go through these 5 steps. So it's going to be quite interactive this evening. It's not just going to be me kind of lecturing you. The idea is that, you know, you're sat down right now, people who are joining live or people who are going to watch the recording of this, this is your time for a good 45 minutes to really think about some aspect of your career and maybe your life to really help you move forward with things. So there's going to be some interactive exercises where I get you to write some things down. I'm going to get you to close your eyes and think through some things. So just a reminder now, if you don't already have a pen, I suppose you can type if you want. I always recommend writing things down. I feel like I do it personally. So just a reminder to get that ready now. So that's going to be about 45 minutes. We're going to be going through the main content of the webinar. For a few minutes at the end, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that I do with healthcare providers, including nurses. So just talking a little bit about the coaching that I do with people. And then at the end, we're going to have the Q&A section. So please do think of any questions and submit those during the course of the webinar. So this photo of me looks like, I don't look very tanned here at all. I think this was taken in winter. My name is Nathan. I'm a clinical psychologist and coach. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm from the UK. So I moved to Melbourne 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, with my wife, and I absolutely love it here. I've worked in lots of different healthcare settings. So after I finished my kind of clinical training, worked in lots of inpatient settings and community-based settings as a clinical psychologist. Obviously worked with lots of different healthcare providers, including lots of nurses, and really, really enjoyed my work with nurses and provided some kind of formal staff support in different settings that I worked for nurses. And after moving to Australia, I've sort of more recently worked in disability services, and very recently moved across to doing some private practice work, kind of therapeutic work and counselling a couple of days a week. But I also run my own business doing this stuff because I absolutely love it. So doing coaching and training with healthcare providers. And this is really all about helping people like you, helping doctors, helping allied health professionals learn some really kind of key skills that are going to help them get moving forward with not just their professional lives, but also their personal lives as well. I believe really strongly in this and feel really passionate about it. I think I apply a lot of these principles in my own life, and I can see how much it's helped me. And yeah, I just love working with other people to do that as well. So, okie doke. So we're going to move into these 5 steps. Step number 1. So when we're feeling different things about our work, sometimes we might have negative emotions, sometimes we might have positive emotions. Sometimes we just don't really give ourselves permission to feel exactly what it is we're feeling. So this is your opportunity right now to really have a think about this. And what I want you to do is get your pen and paper, or you can type, like I said. I want you to answer this question or write this out. If I'm being truly honest with myself, I feel what about my current situation? Just spend a couple of minutes answering that question. If I'm being completely and truly honest with myself, I feel what about my current situation? So often we try and push away some of the feelings that are showing up for us. Maybe it's stress arising from our jobs. As nurses, many of you will be working in sort of highly stressful environments. This year has been particularly challenging for people. And, it's not uncommon for us to just bottle things up and to not really acknowledge what's going on. So just give yourself full permission right now to really just let that kind of bubble up and just write that down, what it is you're feeling. One of the other issues we can have sometimes is that we don't necessarily have the words to express how we're feeling. So this is a list of words that might help you. This feels very negative, but I guess something that's brought you to this webinar is, there is that notion of feeling frustrated. There may be other feelings that are going on right now. So look to see if any of these kind of resonate with you as well. And something we know from neuroscience research is when we are able to label our feelings, that can actually help kind of regulate our emotions better. So this process in itself can be helpful, just recognizing what it is that we're feeling. Okay. So it's not going to be all negative. Of course, this is the first step. We're trying to work out how we're really feeling now, giving ourselves permission to feel whatever it is, and now thinking about some constructive steps we can take. Okay. So the reality gap. So this might kind of explain a bit about how you're feeling right now. This can happen in life in lots of different situations. It can happen in our work roles. It might happen in other parts of our life where there was something that we hoped for. It might be that you went into nursing and you were hoping that nursing would look like something. You had this kind of ideal kind of image of what it would be like to be a nurse. And actually the reality of what you've gone into is perhaps not what you imagined it to be. It may not just be the profession of nursing, it might just be the particular role that you're working in. You read about the job that you applied for, you went to the interview, you found out some information, the employer kind of talked it up and said it was going to be all these sort of great, wonderful things, you're going to have all these responsibilities. Maybe you even took a look around the hospital, the ward, or whatever, and thought it looked good. But then actually, now you're in your current situation. There is this kind of big gap between what you expected it to be and what it actually is like now. So you're not you're not this person over there kind of like dancing and singing, really happy about it. You're kind of thinking, this is really not what I wanted. So just recognizing that maybe you're in that, or you're experiencing that reality gap, can be quite helpful. Okay, so we've identified a bit about how we're really feeling and giving ourselves permission to feel that. Step 2 is clarifying our values. So some of you may have heard about values. I'm sure you would have, in some kind of sense, understand what values are. And in your organization, maybe there are values that the organization is kind of stated. I've had that in different hospitals before, where they've gone through an exercise and they say, oh, we're going to have values of kind of kindness and respect and these sorts of things. But sometimes the organization hasn't really clarified what actions might represent those kind of values. Before I go into talking about values more, I'm just going to get you to do some exercises, because I think this really helps actually kind of understand more about them. So again, I'm actually just going to ask you now to sit back and close your eyes for this exercise. So we're going to try and understand a little bit about what you expected out of nursing. So just to begin with, just asking yourself in your mind, why did I go into nursing? What did you hope to bring to this profession? Just seeing what shows up for you. Thinking about what it was that brought you into it. When you're ready, just jotting down a few notes answering that question. Okay. So now we're going to do another exercise. We're going to do 2 more of these. So again, just closing your eyes. And now I want you to imagine a recent time when you feel like you've been your best at work. So things might not be the way you want them to be all the time. You may be feeling frustrated or demotivated or stressed at times. But try to connect with a recent experience where you felt more satisfied, you felt engaged, you felt immersed in something meaningful. Really trying to bring to mind an image of what that's like. Just imagine observing yourself going about whatever activity it was you were doing. What is it you're doing? What are the kinds of things you're saying? Who are you with? Perhaps you're acting with kindness or compassion with the patients that you work with or colleagues. Perhaps you're acting with integrity or solving problems. Perhaps you're being assertive and standing up for yourself or taking risks. I'm just feeling into the emotions that show up as well as you think this through. When you've brought to mind some of those things, and when you're ready, just opening your eyes and just writing down whatever showed up for you. A useful kind of sentence, the beginning of a sentence for that could be, when I'm my most engaged at work, I'm doing what? When I'm my happiest at work, I'm doing what? What kind of person am I being? Okay. So now we're going to do a final one of these. So again, just going to invite you to close your eyes. So now I want you to imagine yourself in 20 years' time. So everyone watching this will be different ages. So for some of you, that might be, you might be retired. Some of you, it might just be later down your career. I want you to imagine this version of you in 20 years' time as a wiser, more confident version of you who's taken on lots of challenges. There's been enormous growth professionally and personally. This version of you is looking back at this time in your life right now. What do you want this time of your life? What do you want to have stood for? How would you have acted in this current situation? What are the qualities that you want to bring, the strengths that you want to use or develop to move forward? How could you get to being that wiser, more confident self? So just jotting down some notes after that as well, whenever you're ready. It doesn't matter if it's just individual words that show up for you. Perhaps images did. Everyone responds to these kind of exercises differently, and that's okay. Okay. So hopefully you would have had a bit of an opportunity there to write some things down. So what we're getting at with these exercises, it's tapping into your values, okay? So values are kind of qualities of being the kind of person that we want to be. So words like compassionate, kindness, assertive, these are things that can be our values. And clarifying our values is like setting the direction on a compass. So life is kind of like a journey, isn't it? And setting that direction and having that compass can help point us in the way that we want to go. Values are things that should be chosen by us, the way that we want to act and behave. So often in society, there are other pressures coming on us which might push us in certain directions. We might grow up in a family in which there are obviously family values which we may start to kind of absorb, but sometimes they're not really our own values. If they're not chosen by us, then, that's not necessarily going to really help us. So we can think of values as being summarized. We can summarize them often in kind of individual words. So just have a look at this list of values. Here's some common values or ways of being or acting. And I wonder if any of these kind of things resonate with you with any of the exercises you just did. So perhaps people could just type in the chat box. I want to see if anyone Yeah, any of these words that show up for people as being important to them, the kind of person that they want to be. Yeah, compassionate, empathetic, inspiring leader. Fantastic. So one of the other reasons, well, I suppose there's a few different reasons why it can be really important to clarify our values. So it can be really good for kind of understanding our own identity. So like some of these examples you've just given, like if you want to be an inspiring leader, that says something about who you are and who you aspire to be. Once we're able to set that kind of direction on a compass, that can help us move towards that kind of person we want to be, even if we're in challenging, tough situations that make us feel frustrated. Educate, teach, great. Values can also be really helpful for decision making. So if we're clear about the kind of person that we want to be and the way we want to act in different situations, that can help when we're forced into a situation in which we have to make two different choices. And in your work, whatever setting it is, I'm sure there are lots of different decisions, choices you have to make on a daily basis that could be guided by your values. The other thing values are great for is sort of bringing meaning and purpose to our life. So obviously, even though you guys will be feeling frustrated or whatever those other kind of negative emotions you identified, I'm sure on a day-to-day basis there are things that you're doing which do bring some sense of satisfaction. Once we're really clear about our values and that direction we're headed in, at the end of the day, we can kind of look back at the things that we've done and we can think to ourselves, yeah, was that behavior consistent with my values? And if it was, that brings us a sense of meaning and satisfaction. Of course, we do tend to experience some of that anyway, but when we actually get really clear about the values that are important to us, it can really help and really connect with that. This is something that I do. I'm really clear about the values that are important to me. So, for example, giving this webinar, this is about values around doing kind of teaching, courage, standing here and doing this webinar in front of you guys. It feels like a courageous thing for me to do. When this is finished, I'm going to look back and say, you know what, I acted in accordance with my values, and that's going to bring a sense of kind of meaning and purpose to my life. So in those previous few exercises you did, hopefully you got a sense of some of the values, some of the things the reasons why you wanted to go into nursing, some of the values that are important to you right now, and maybe some of the things that are going to be important to you in the future. Okay, so when we've got this reality gap, there are a few sort of possible reasons that we can think about. So one can be a lack of clarity, which we've kind of discussed already. If we're not clear about what our values are, we're just going to work, we're just kind of getting on with the day-to-day business. We're not clear on the kind of person that we want to be. And of course, you're probably working in an environment in which there's stress and things. At the end of the day, you weren't really clear about the kind of person you wanted to be. There's all this kind of environmental stress going on around you, and it just doesn't feel very satisfying. It might feel frustrating. And this is a situation which we all face at times. So sometimes there are barriers to acting towards our values. So this is a very real thing. You might work in a hospital or a clinic somewhere where, based on the kind of systems and policies that are in place, there are real barriers that are there that stop you sort of working to be the person you want to be. So, for example, a classic one, if you went into nursing because you wanted to be compassionate and you wanted to be empathetic with patients, and you work in a ward where it's just completely overrun and you haven't got enough time really to spend quality time, or you don't feel like you're spending quality time with patients, and that's because of the way the sort of policies and the way the ward is being run, then that's a real barrier, isn't it, for you sort of behaving in the way you want to towards your values. And as I say that, I wonder whether anyone's sort of got any kind of examples of that. So I'm sure that must be showing up for some of you. Okay, and the other one is sometimes we actually act out of alignment with our values as well. So in any given day, right, we have probably hundreds of what we can call choice points, points in which we could do something that might take us towards the kind of person we want to be in our values, and do something that might take us away from the kind of person we want to be. So let's say, for example, a value of yours is about kind of being patient and listening to other people's point of view. Maybe you work in a kind of stressful environment. Maybe you haven't slept particularly well. And then when you're at work, there is someone who, is maybe being a little bit demanding. Maybe it's a family member or someone. And instead of kind of being patient with them and trying to listen to their point of view, perhaps you're a little bit short with them. And perhaps you're a little bit dismissive of them. And of course, that doesn't necessarily feel good afterwards, does it? These are the kinds of experiences we have, which afterwards we feel a little bit guilty, maybe we just feel a bit bad about ourselves. And, this can contribute to frustration, perhaps with ourselves as well. So when we're acting out of alignment with our values. And of course, all of these kind of things can interact together, these three possible issues. Okay, so step 3, I've kind of already started alluding to this. You've got to be clear about what the values are that are important to you, that kind of direction that you want to take. Understanding the link between your values and specific actions on a day-to-day basis is really important and really, really helpful, can bring that sense of meaning to our work and to our personal life. So I'm just going to go through a few more examples here of thinking about values and actions. So I just mentioned, patience and understanding. If that is a core value or core values of yours, actions kind of in service of those values might be committing to practicing taking a deep breath, being patient by not reacting, using a calm voice when someone is being demanding with you, maybe by a patient. Perhaps supporting your team or being supportive with your team is a really important value of yours. So specific actions that you might take might be things like defending your team against unfounded criticism by a senior colleague or a doctor or whoever it is. And one of the good things about values is that whilst two people might say, I have this value of supporting my team or being supportive, what that actually looks like in practice for different people is completely different, right? So someone else being supportive of their team, what might be more important is asking colleagues how they feel, how they really feel in the morning, right? We often have this kind of social script where we say, oh yeah, how are you going? Yep, fine, fine. Of course, a lot of the time there are difficulties that we're experiencing. So a specific action you can take that is related to this value might be actually asking colleagues how they really feel, giving them words of encouragement and support. And then finally, another example, perhaps being kind to yourself is something that's really important. Maybe that's something that you've been neglecting a bit, but it is important to you. I think to a large extent, we all kind of do want to be kind to ourselves, don't we? It's kind of, I suppose, a value that we probably all hold, but it's just not as strongly held at certain times. So here's a specific action that you could take, writing a kind of affirmation, such as, I'm only human, we all make mistakes, writing that on a note. Throughout the course of the day, if mistakes happen, if things happen, pulling that out and reading it to yourself and saying it to yourself in a kind voice. Okay. So we thought about values. We thought about specific actions we can take that lead towards those particular ways of being. Now we're going to talk about goals. So some of you watching may have had some kind of training before on goal setting. I'm not sure. But I'm just going to go through what we know, I guess, from the science about setting effective goals. So I suppose some of the actions that I spoke about before, we will class them as goals. So goals are things that we can tick off. We know when we have done a goal. And the difference between values and goals is that a value is like that direction on a compass. So it's like heading west, for example. We can never reach west, but there are things that we can kind of tick off we've seen on the way. We've seen the river, We've seen the mountain. So making that distinction is quite important. Effective goals are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable. And I like to use this 90% confidence rule. If you're not 90% confident you're going to achieve it, then try and readjust the goal in some way. Do you need extra skills to be able to achieve that goal, or what else can we change about it? They're time bound, and goals love to be written down. When goals are written down, they repay you later down the line. And values. So as we've been talking about, when goals are linked to a value, we're much more likely to follow through. So often one of the reasons we don't follow through with goals is because there might be some difficulty. So, something about the situation makes it challenging. There might be inner thoughts and feelings that get in the way, lack of motivation or anxiety. But when we can connect to a bigger why, that can really help us follow through with something. So the science really does tell us that writing down goals is really helpful. It helps us to start generating an image in our mind of what it would be like if I achieved that thing, if I did that thing. And that really helps us. So what we're going to do now, here's a couple of examples actually to sort of bring to life that idea of SMART goals, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. So here's example one. So on Sunday morning at 10 a.m, after I have breakfast, I'll sit in my bedroom and read 2 journal articles about critical care nursing. So do you see how specific that goal is? Like the time, the place, even after an activity, you've been specific about when you're going to do it, which activity is going to come after, how many things you're going to do, and the specific topic as well. And this might be related to values like learning and growth. In this second example, on Monday morning in my meeting with my manager at 11 a.m, I'll raise the issue I have with whatever issue it might be. I'm sure this kind of situation happens quite a lot at the beginning of our conversation. So again, you've been very specific with yourself around when that's going to happen. You be specific about the particular issue it is that you want to raise and when it's going to happen. And then this could be linked to values like assertiveness, continuous improvement, efficiency, and so forth. So step 4, start setting effective values-driven goals. So what we're going to do now is an exercise. What I want you to do is pick, one value to begin with from the ones that you generated before, the things that are important to you. So it might be, so with some of these ones that you guys said in the chat, so compassionate and empathetic, inspiring leader, considerate, to educate, to teach, it could be one of these values, could be one of the other ones that you came up with. And I want you to think about a way you can bring that value to life in the next few days, maybe even tomorrow, whenever you're working next. So thinking about a specific action you can take and what it would look like. Where would that take place? What time? So just writing down some ideas with that now. So sometimes it can be tricky to think about specific actions you could take with things like, let's say, for example, one of your values is, I want to bring humor and fun to the work I do. It might be quite hard to think about how I can write a specific goal for that. So what I would advise is something like this. If we want to bring fun and humor or a particular way of being to our work, we have to set an intention to be like that. And sometimes writing some sort of reminder to act in that way can be helpful. So for example, you might write down on a sticky note or just put an alarm on your phone, just the word fun or humor. and set the goal of writing that down on Tuesday morning, taking it with me on my way on the tram or whatever it is, however you get to work, reading it before I go in to my shift at whatever time it is you start your shift, and committing to myself to try and bring that kind of air of fun and humor into the work I do. The same goes for enthusiasm, for example. If you want to be more enthusiastic about your work, you could write down a commitment that you want to bring enthusiasm. If you're struggling to, if you're seeing other people who are enthusiastic and you're kind of struggling to bring that yourself, thinking, oh, I'm not really an enthusiastic person, then maybe just observe the behaviors of other people around you. See what they're doing and see if you can kind of emulate and commit to that, commit to trying that on. So some of you will have values around leadership, I'm sure. So Miriam's one was about being an inspiring leader. What could you do in the next week, the next few days, that would be an action in service of that value? What would that look like? And try and do this for a couple of values. If anyone doesn't mind sharing something that they've put as well, just summarizing what it is you intend to do. Struggling to think of specific actions that they could take, just let me know the value. We can talk about that. This is your opportunity to write down some specific things. Like I said, writing goals, something that we often don't do, but this can be really, really helpful, keeping us on track, connecting with who we want to be in spite of other things perhaps being frustrating. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So in that exercise, I guess we're thinking about, what we class as short-term goals. So those specific day-to-day actions that we could take. Of course, there are different types of goals. So we've got short-term goals, that things we do in the next week. We've got longer-term goals as well, right? It's really important how values connect to some of those goals as well. So I'm providing you a worksheet which you'll get, and this will help you to kind of work on some of these longer term goals. Oh, okay. Miriam's just put in, show kindness through active listening, follow up on issues and make necessary changes and review outcome. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Miriam. I'm hoping that getting that written down and being specific has given you a good idea of what you need to do and what's going to be helpful for you. So yeah, within the worksheet, you're going to have more of an opportunity to work on this. So goal setting in itself could probably be a whole webinar, to be quite honest. It's such an important thing that we hear a lot about, but we don't really do it. And when we do it properly, it can be very, very effective. So here's just an example of what's like a longer term goal, I guess. So maybe you want to pursue and pursue some sort of master's degree. So it might maybe a master's in mental health nursing, for example. Setting our values around that can be really helpful. So in this case, it might be, values around learning, challenging yourself, supporting people with mental health difficulties, and skillfulness, learning some new skills. If we think about and set goals for the future like that, it might be an educational goal, it might be getting a promotion, it could be anything really. Thinking about the values and tying it to values can be really helpful, because often when we're pursuing a longer term goal, like studying, I've done lots of postgrad study, it's hard work, right? Like there's hours and hours of sometimes boring stuff we have to do. It's not all fun. We might have to write essays. We might have to do group projects, whatever it is. You might be having to balance that with like family kind of commitments. If we're able to link that hard work to values, that can be really helpful to sort of push us through. Okay, this is because I want to develop as a learner. I want to challenge myself. That's the kind of person I want to be. I really desperately want to support people with mental health difficulties, and learn some new skills. So, yeah, we've probably got a couple of minutes. Maybe just now, just jotting down, what are some of your longer term goals? So we thought about some specific actions you can take in the next week. Some things that will hopefully give you that sense of satisfaction and meaning in your role. What are some of the longer term goals in the next few months into next year, perhaps? Just jotting down any ideas you have. And if you can, thinking about some of those values. Why would you do that? What's important to you about achieving that goal? It may be taking on new responsibilities in the area you work in. It may be a career move. If you can hear the birds outside, that's because it's that time of the evening where they all return from whatever they've been doing during the day. Really wonderful sound. Okay. So hopefully you've got a couple of things there. And of course, you can elaborate on this in your own time. So I was actually going to add this as another step, because I sort of realized this is something that's very important. So now you've done some of this work today around clarifying your values. Carrying them around with us, sort of like literally and metaphorically, is really important. So once we're clear about the kind of person we want to be, like actually writing that down on a piece of paper, putting a reminder in our phone, as we spoke about with some of those other examples, like enthusiastic or whatever, even if it's around leadership or anything, having it in a prominent place that you can see it, maybe it's on your computer, maybe it's on your desk, that's really helpful, because once we start to get much clearer on what our values are, that just in itself helps to direct our behavior. So I'd really do that. Okay, so we're on to step 5. So hopefully you've already found some kind of utility in the previous steps helpful. But step 5 is just about reviewing the different options that we have in any kind of challenging situation. So of course, these are a bit simplified, but hopefully they get across, or they condense things quite nicely, I think. So that we can call this kind of like the challenge formula. What can we do in a tricky situation? So 1 is we can stay. So in your current role, whatever you're doing, maybe you're frustrated, demotivated, whatever it is you're feeling, stay and do or change nothing. If you continue to do that, I mean, I would predict, I guess, that you're not going to be feeling great in the next few months. Probably going to be feeling the way you are now, maybe feeling even worse. Option number 2 is stay, change what you can about the situation, and live by your values, but maybe you continue to struggle or fight with the things that you don't like. So some of those things that you can't change, perhaps you're resisting them and getting frustrated with them. in this kind of option, maybe you've clarified your values a bit and you try to live into them more, but you're still struggling and resisting with things. Of course, that option sounds a bit better than option 1. Option number 3 is stay, change what you can, live by your values, and make room for the difficult feelings created by kind of certain aspects of the job. So this is about developing and cultivating a level of acceptance about certain things. So in the kinds of environments you work in, I guess there's always going to be things that are quite challenging, or there's going to be pressure. Sometimes we can change things, sometimes we can't. But if we commit to really living by our values and accepting some of those things, that can feel a lot better, a lot more satisfying. And number 4, of course, you have the option to leave, don't you? In any situation, well, I guess sometimes there might be issues, like financially, it might make it difficult for you to make that decision around leaving. But leaving generally is an option. We can move roles. You can move out of nursing. You can potentially, even though that might feel scary. Of course, when we leave as well, it's better if we leave and we do that according to our values. So maybe you just realize that in this current role, it's just impossible for you to be the kind of person that you want to be. And leaving for you is a values-based decision, and you go into a role or something else which you kind of know, or you hope is going to enable you to act more consistently in the way you want to. This is something I did this year myself, actually. So I was in a role before my current role and found myself very frustrated. I was doing lots of admin. So I didn't go into psychology to spend my whole time writing reports, but I found myself doing increasingly more of that. And, I got clear on what my values were. I realized that this was just going to be a part of the job and had to kind of accept that, unfortunately, that there were definitely times where I resisted against it. I was like, oh, why do I have to write reports all the time? But kind of learned to kind of sit with that. And it took me a process of a few months, but eventually I left the job and ended up going back into doing psychological therapy for a couple of days a week, which is a really values-based decision for me. And that is now fantastic. I absolutely love it. So it's quite a simplified way of looking at things. There's obviously a bit more complexity to it, but when we follow these things, it can be really helpful. Okay, so actually, before we finish there, I'm just going to ask, what are people thinking at the moment? Option 1, 2, 3, or 4 with your current situation? Is anyone going to go for a 4? Or are we going for any 3s or 2s? Or even a 1? Okay. Okie doke. So yeah, 2 or 3, we've got option 3. And I guess some of the, it can be really difficult to cultivate that kind of acceptance with some of the things, because sometimes we just really, really don't like what's happening at our job and around us. And I appreciate that can be really difficult. Okay, thanks for that interaction there. So Veronica says 3, fantastic. Biggest issue is not enough time. Yeah. And time pressure, means that we can't act into our values all the time, right? So look, we're at the end of our steps there. I hope you found some of this useful. I'd be really interested to hear some of your thoughts. If anyone does want to get in touch with me to know which bits you did find useful as feedback, I'm going to give you my email address. So before we move on to the Q&A, I'm just going to have a look. Has anyone actually posted any questions? Maybe not. If you haven't, okay, there's no questions posted there. If you've got any questions, feel free to just type them into the chat box now. Before we move on to the Q&A, like I said, I'm just going to tell you quickly about the coaching that I do. So if you found value in what we've done this evening, thinking about the direction that you want to head in, clarifying the kind of goals that you want to work on, then coaching might be of interest to you. So a lot of people haven't really heard of coaching, I guess. And most people have heard of counseling and therapy. Counseling and therapy is obviously working with people when they have mental health difficulties. Coaching is applicable for anyone, really. So coaching involves one-to-one conversation with someone in which they're listening to you, they're helping you change your perspective on things potentially. It's a confidential space in which you get to kind of be creative, and it becomes kind of thought provoking through asking, I suppose, really good questions. So, I may not be a nurse myself. It doesn't really matter because when I ask people questions about their own experience, it can help them change their perspective and help them focus on the things that they really, really want to in life, in their career and in their personal life as well. So, as we get towards the end of the year, I guess, sometimes we get to November and we think, oh, just, it's been a rubbish year. Let's just write it off. I'm not going to kind of set goals. I'm not going to work on anything till the 1st of January. There's absolutely no need to do that. We've got 2 months left. There's lots that can be achieved. So I'm kind of offering an end of year package with my coaching. So I'm offering 40% off for coaching sessions. And this is only available for people watching this webinar live. So with my coaching, I always offer a free session as well. It's really good to understand what the process looks like. A lot of people have not heard of coaching. They don't really know what it would actually entail. And I get that. So I'm happy to offer like a free video call with people so they can talk to me. We can work on the kinds of issues that they might want to kind of overcome. It might be some of the things that you've been working on today in this webinar. And then after that, you can decide whether or not you want to continue. My packages are always tailored to individual people. So everyone's situation is different, right? Not everyone is going to need 6, 8 sessions. Sometimes it might just be a couple of sessions that can get you on the track that you want to. And I offer a money back guarantee as well. So this helps me. It's a commitment for me to provide the best possible service. And it also gives people reassurance that if they start and after a couple of sessions, they really feel like they're not making progress, then you can get your money back. So if this is something that you'd be interested in, then feel free to just drop me an email at nathan@nathanillman.com. And this offer is only valid until midday tomorrow. So you can send me an email or send me a Facebook message just to find out some more information. Okay, so Q&A. So I don't have any questions that have been submitted during the webinar. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone who's here live? Is there anything that you would like me to answer around anything, around values, around goals? Jan, I appreciate those comments. Thanks. It's been useful. It gives me a different perspective. Miriam, thank you. The session has been insightful. Fantastic. It's always a bit of a funny format doing a webinar like this because I can't see you. I much prefer being in person with people. And I hope at some stage I can do in-person things, and maybe some of you would come and attend those as well. It'd be fantastic to meet people. And just wait for another couple of minutes to see if there's any other questions. If no one watching or attending has got any questions, something I might ask of you who are still here is, are there any other kind of webinars that you think would be helpful? So Donna, how is it best to deal with colleagues who show attitude towards you or other colleagues? So with that, Donna, I would ask the question, what kind of person do you want to be? So sometimes we have to deal with rudeness and incivility in the workplace. And actually, I know about some research that with nurses in particular and the kind of roles that you have, you come across that quite a lot in different settings. And of course, that's not necessarily something we can control, right? We're not in control of other people's behavior all the time. So I would be asking, how do you want to behave? When someone's being rude to you, what kind of person do you want to be? What do you want to stand for in that situation? So it might be that you have values around kind of respect and patience, being non-reactive to people. And there might be also, yeah, I guess something around assertion, being assertive as well. So, or standing up for yourself. And being assertive and standing up for yourself doesn't necessarily mean being reactive and raising our voices. It might just be about explaining, this is okay. It's if people are showing a high level of emotion, say someone's angry, saying to someone, it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to shout at me, for example. And that might be a good example of an action of being assertive. Okay. You want to be more assertive, Donna? Yeah. Yeah, I think assertiveness is not necessarily something we get trained in, is it? As we grow up, it can be quite a difficult skill. And assertiveness as well is not something we don't just have assertiveness in all areas of our life. Like I would consider myself as being quite assertive in some areas, but not necessarily so much in other areas. And it's a skill that we need to practice and kind of train. Donna, assertiveness is something that I work on in coaching with people as well. Thinking about those situations in which you're feeling kind of sensitive and working on those assertiveness skills. It's something that, yeah, like other skills, like being more confident, it's something we do need to practice and understand what our kind of internal barriers are to being more assertive. But it's certainly something that would help in that situation. No problem. Okay. Right. Well, I'm going to give you 30 seconds more in case there's any other questions. The other thing as well is I will provide the slides for people if they would like them. So I'll be sending, gosh, there's a lot I'm sending. You're going to get access to the free worksheet, which has the questions that we went through today and some extra ones as well. So you can take that off and you can use that whenever you want. I'll send you the slides and also, what's the last thing? Oh yeah, a certificate as well. I made a certificate for people who are watching. And if you're watching the replay of this, then just email me and ask for the certificate. Okay. Just looking at Miriam's response. Good question, Donna. The worst when people say, don't you know she's like that? Yeah, so I'm guessing, yeah, this people being quite challenging at work comes up quite a lot, right? So actually, one of the next webinars I'm thinking of running is around confidence, and yeah, I suppose assertiveness would be included in that as well. So maybe that's something you guys can keep an eye out for, and I can let you know about that. We can think a bit more specifically about working on some of those skills. Yeah, being sensitive is perceived as weak, but it can be a real strength, right? Being sensitive to the needs of other people, being sensitive to our own needs and emotions. Yeah. Okay. I just want to say a big thank you for people who've attended live this evening. Again, it looks like you've got some insights out of this. I'm really, really pleased to have been able to share this stuff with you. And for people watching the live recording as well, I really hope you found it useful. You'll get all those materials. You will see more from me. Some of you might have liked my Facebook page. I do live streams and things. I write blog articles. I make little videos. So yeah, please follow my stuff. And if you ever have any suggestions of things that you would like me to create any videos and things, then please just get in touch with me. Feel free to message me on Facebook or send me an email. I'll just put my email address here again. It's nathan@nathanillman.com. And just a final reminder, if you're interested in finding more out more about the coaching package with that 40% off deal, send me an email before midday tomorrow. Okay, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you a good evening or rest of your day, depending on what time you're watching this. Bye-bye.